Hi everyone and welcome to episode 54 of the ITSM crowd. Today I'm joined by two of my good friends and VeriSM co-authors. So we've got Suzanne van Hove and Louise Anderson with us. We're also hoping that Johan Botha is going to drop in at some point, but at the moment we think he's having a few technical issues. I'll also let you know up front that I can hear Suzanne and Louise can hear Suzanne and myself, but Suzanne can't hear Louise. So I'm going to be doing a bit more of an active moderation role today and letting people know when to stop and start talking. But our topic today is VeriSM and other practices. So the VeriSM books have been published now for, I think, more than a year. And we're starting to see more and more early adopters. We're starting to see more and more changes in the world of service management as well. So Louise suggested this topic, and we think it would be a really nice opportunity just to chat about how VeriSM's fitting into the service management world and how it integrates with other things, particularly after the recent release of ITIL 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask our guests to introduce themselves. So Louise, if you want to go first and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please.
Thank you very much, Claire, for this invitation. First of all, I would like to say that I'm very grateful for having been member of the international team that support you all guys and to create VeriSM Unwrap and Apply. The interaction with other colleagues while collaborated in all of this has been once in a lifetime learning experience. It's something that I'm very humble and grateful for this opportunity. The reason that I suggest this topic is because one of the hangouts that you created, I just summarizes that there is so much fragmentation, compartmentalization of the knowledge that is said that what we should bring something that converges all what exists into the business for the benefit of the business. So I found that this is a very innovative approach to bridge in practical terms, concrete terms, the business domain with the IT domain. And one element that helps to bring that together is the management mage. And the intersection point of both domains has been the object of my entire career in different capacities: facilitator, consultant, mentor, and particularly into the Latin American region. Thank you.
That's brilliant, thank you. And Suzanne, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please.
Sure. Suzanne van Hove, and lead author of VeriSM. I also own a small service management company in the United States and work in international standards rather extensively. I'm currently the convener of JCT1 SC40 WG2, which is the work group that owns the 20,000 series, and we've been very busy over the past year with the revision of ISO 20000, which is important to our mesh, and then the update and the revision of all of the accompanying documents that go with it. I also work in the academia setting and teaching service management to MBA students, which is just a pleasure to do, and working in a university setting, not only in the United States, but also in Eastern Europe. So kind of get a global feel, do a little bit of additional work within ISO and speaking at their services conference in Singapore coming up in June. And trying to promote again a little bit of a side topic of how ISO 20000 can be used outside of IT. If you read it carefully, it doesn't talk about IT at all. It's only got IT on the cover because we're forced to because of the committee that we sit in, but it really is applicable outside of the IT setting. So kind of a varied background and have a lot of fun doing it and rack up a lot of air miles. So looking forward to this conversation. So thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And I think, yeah, most of us in the service management world have a carbon footprint, which is nothing to be proud of. But video conferencing did not remove the need for travel.
Right.
So my name's Clara Agutter. I'm going to be the moderator, facilitator, I don't know, host for today's session. We are keeping an eye on Twitter. So if you've got any questions that you want to put to Louise or Suzanne as we're talking, as we're chatting, if you pop those onto Twitter and use the hashtag ITSM crowd, I will keep an eye on that as the session progresses, and we'll get to anything that comes in while we're talking. Oh, we've got Johan just dropping in. Yeah. Johan, welcome. Do you have sound?
This is going to be the challenging ITSM crowd hangout, I think.
I think 9 out of 10 of these are perfect.
I just realized I can't be on YouTube and Hangout at the same time.
Welcome, Johan. We were just doing introductions, so you're at the perfect point to come in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Johan Botha. I'm based in Joburg, but I travel all over into anything that makes organizations better. So I come from a service management background, focus quite a lot on innovation, digital transformation stuff lately, and also governance. With Suzanne, I also dabble a little bit in the academia. So last year I was a visiting lecturer, but this year I'm the lecturer on an MPhil IT governance program, where I teach people also service management, and yeah, that's going to be fun.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
I'm also one of the authors and lead authors of VeriSM Unwrapped and Applied, and yeah, I teach this stuff.
And just checking, Suzanne, can you hear Johan?
No, this is going to be one of those occasions that, you know, I'm just going to be shooting in the dark, and hopefully I don't conflict with anybody. Kind of like that game show, you know. It's like, can you guess what they're saying?
I'll keep you up to date with what's happening as we
All
go.
right.
All right. So, Louise, you kind of suggested this topic, and to me, it felt like there was a bit of overlap with this enterprise service management concept that's being talked about a lot more, which is essentially this merging of IT and the business. So tell me a little bit more about your thinking in this space, and why you think it's important to discuss it.
If you ask me, what will be the most compelling reason that drive the growth of the enterprise service management, it would be difficult to say that there is. It could be multiple reasons. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. I can hear you.
Okay. There is no unique answer. There is a common denominator. That is that the expansion of has made all business functions dependent on IT. That means that service management as a concept has gained awareness and has been important across different industries as well, different type of companies. And that concept has gone beyond IT, and it says that it's the natural evolution of IT service management into other areas. And by IT service management, I mean that management of the services IT teams deliver to the business. So when we get into the enterprise service management, that definition, that concept has to be managed, or has to be amendment in a way that includes the enterprise or the business. And the way that I will do it is the management of solutions, being solutions, products, and services that business teams instead of IT teams, and those basic and the concept of business teams, what I meant is organizational capabilities deliver to satisfy expected outcome of the consumer. So when we rearrange or redefine the terms used in the definition of enterprise service management, we're pointing to what VeriSM has produced or has created to the world, a different perspective, an approach and not a framework. So which happen to be the fundamental or the foundations, definitions, or concept behind VeriSM. That is an organizational capability that is part of the role played by all people in an organization, regardless of the location of the hierarchy. And it's not meant for only one area. It's the entire, it's everybody works together to contribute in the creation of those solutions. And technology is just an enabler of, for operational model and business processes. And then when it says that, and because it has passed from IT teams into the business, and business functions are so dependent on IT, so it's moving by inertia that IT team has to do everything. But remember, when you are using Waze as a guidance or GPS to go to one location to the other, usually you hear that, watch out, value traps ahead, what means that those value traps, because everything is thinking in terms of technology, that creates barrier between the IT and the rest of the organization. So what we need is we're required to break old habits and develop new ones that produce real and perceived value. And so I find that VeriSM comes into bridge or close that gap that exists between IT and the business domain.
That's a really nice summary, and I'm going to bring Suzanne in at this point, just to fill Suzanne in where we are. So Louise has just been explaining about the fact that service management now is spreading outside of IT. Organisations are focused on solutions that meet the needs of consumers and not thinking in terms of IT and the business. And this is where kind of enterprise service management is coming from. And really, this was the gap that VeriSM fitted into. So maybe Suzanne, I can ask you to talk to us a little bit more about how VeriSM helps organisations that are going through this transformation and moving away from this business IT relationship.
Sure. It's kind of funny because it's a good question and it's a valid question. And as soon as you say service management, I think people immediately just, drop into IT. But at the same time, I can't think of an organization or a vertical that doesn't provide service. And in the delivery of that service, traditionally, even though the business itself may be the instigator of that service sits in IT. And they still have that disconnect. They don't see them as a group that works together rather than, oh, it's just they give me the platform to me to deliver this. And if it goes wrong, it's on IT. And, that idea has to go away. And I think it's slowly transforming into the idea of saying, hey, the entire organization includes IT. It's not this separate standalone entity that sits outside in the parking lot or something like that. And, we just go out and, put a quarter in and say, hey, give us back something. So from this enterprise view and the demand for service, the demand for speed and velocity of delivering those services, folks, I think, have started to understand that we have to work together. And it's the fact of the ideas, and I had a conversation with somebody yesterday or the day before about thinking that IT is going to disappear in 5 to 10 years. It's just business technology, because there's so much technology now that's wrapped up within the business itself, that what's the need for, an IT department? Now, do we still need the functionality? Absolutely. But I don't believe we're going to have that separate IT department. So what does that mean from a VeriSM standpoint is that I think it all comes back down into that mesh where we've said, take a full scope view of the organization itself, not just within IT. Look at all of the management practices, look at the culture and the climate of the organization, look at the resources within and outside of IT, and then also then sit there and say, what do I, or how can I readily exploit all of these emerging technologies? yesterday I sat in on a panel of AI, around AI. And I don't know anything about AI, but I do know something about service management. And it was funny because I was the little bump in the room, because I had to stand up and say, hey, folks, I'm not going to talk about anything sexy. I'm going to talk about management. And by golly, if you all don't get your hands around the idea that you create the technology to meet the need of a consumer, you've created waste. And came up with, and I'm not going to say it correctly, but the person sitting next to me said, either perfection is the enemy of good.
Yes.
And I think that is a very clear state here, is that we need to understand what needs to be provided. And, eyes opened in the room. I was kind of hated there for a little bit, but then all of a sudden it made sense. And so that is that enterprise view of service, and that idea that the consumer is the one that's driving, as well as the mission and the objectives of the organization. Those two things have to meld. And once those two things meld, all of the organization can then be involved in the delivery of service. I could talk way too long, and I have no idea what's being said on the other side, so I'm going to stop. Hopefully something resonated.
I'll just check. Johan, can you hear Louise and Suzanne?
Yeah, I can hear Suzanne perfectly. I just want to actually connect to what Suzanne said. We stopped actually talking to us about service management. We talk about value management, because the moment we say service, they think IT. And if we talk about value, they think about how the organization creates value. And that's what we need to do. We need to think about how the organization as a whole works together to create value. So yeah, I know I'm a little bit obsessed with value, being a lean person, but that's what I quite like about what we're busy doing, and the sort of the conversation that everybody's busy having is that it is about value, and value is not created by IT; it is facilitated by IT. So I quite often controversially say, IT services creates no value, and then people get really cross with me, and I say, but it's the use of IT services that creates value. And that's what I like about the new ITIL, that emphasis on the fact that it's about co-creation. It's about the business taking responsibility for the unlocking of the value and actually creating value for the customer. And if we keep on looking at IT to provide the solution, then it's never going to happen. And quite honestly, I agree with Suzanne. I don't think there should be an IT department in a business in 10 years. The only IT people that should survive should be in cloud providers. We're already in a no-ops environment in our organization. Yeah, we all come from an IT background and so forth, but yeah, we don't have IT staff. We don't have IT systems. We can all code. We can all create things. We can all automate things. We can all think about how do we make things better for our customers, and that's what a business should do. That was an abrupt stop.
It was. I was just checking. I think you're both absolutely right, Suzanne and Johan, talking about VeriSM's focus on the consumer, on value. But then one of the questions that I'm getting asked an awful lot is about, well, how does VeriSM fit with everything else that we're trying to deal with in IT at the moment? How does it fit with Agile, with Lean, with DevOps, with Kanban, with everything else that's going on? And Louise, maybe I can ask you to just talk a little bit more about that.
Certainly. I said in my introduction that the intersection point of both of the domain, of the business domain and the technology domain, has been my focus in my career. And then when we were developing this book, which is in depth level to the first book of the service management in the digital age, I encounter that one element in VeriSM, and particularly the management mesh, helps to fill that gap, as you summarized it at the beginning of the introduction. One thing that I have created and one thing that I have studied in depth is how the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas fits together and help to fill that gap. I have created this slide. I hope is able to, everybody could see it.
Yeah.
It is well positioned. Okay. So in one side, we happen to have the business model canvas, which happen to be the blueprint of any organization. But then, and then on the other side, you happen to have the VeriSM that provides a high-level description of how products and services are defined, produced, and provided within an organization. So the elements that will help to join them or to bridge them together happen to be the management mesh. So the management mesh sits in the middle of it, and is the way that is the communication tissue that exists between the business and the technical domain. But of course, we need, that have to be guardrailed by governance and management principles. Those elements will give you the need tolerance that will allow the create consistency across the different layers and across the different constituent of the organization. And that's why it is beautiful and it's brilliant that VeriSM raised above from all that fragmentation that exists. And so I think it's very important that we have dedicated this time to explain and explore how. So, and again, imagine this happened to be like the Star Trek, the Enterprise, which happened to be the ship model, that the blueprint of it is depicted on the canvas. But then we have all those goodies that need somehow to be coupled, to be interlocked between the business and IT, and the management mesh will do that in a flexible way that will provide the necessary resilience to the organization to adapt to the changing process, but at the same time, the tolerance that the organization needs in order to evolve from what they're standing. That's how I see it, how that how the VeriSM play a role to integrate. At the beginning of VeriSM, we said that the management mesh was the glue. Actually, what happened is the management mesh is the point of convergence. And digital transformation of the digital world is about convergence of what we have with the new. That's how we see, and that's how VeriSM works through the management mesh. As I said, in a very concrete and practical way, not as a concept or theoretical. And we could see in all the business cases and people who are getting on board about that. From what they are using the management mesh to get clarified them how to use them, all what they have.
And do you have an electronic copy of that diagram that you could share with me? Because we'll write a blog after today's episode. I think it'd be nice if we could share that with people.
Certainly, and actually, I'm just polishing an article that I want to publish regarding this particular aspect of it, how to bridge, how the business domain and technical domain bridges or get together through the management mesh. Certainly.
Fantastic. We can add a link to that blog after the episode as well. Now we're kind of coming up to our last 5 minutes. So I just want to answer a question. It's a bit of an elephant in the room that I keep getting asked at the moment, which is people keep asking me how VeriSM fits with ITIL 4, the newly released ITIL update. I got asked this when I was presenting at a DevOps meetup the other week. And the answer that I gave on the night was that from a VeriSM perspective, ITIL is part of an organization's management mesh. So if an organization is using ITIL as one of its management practices, it would be a case of analysing how they're using ITIL at the moment, looking to see if there's any gaps or any shortfalls or any capabilities that are missing, and then assessing whether ITIL 4 could be the thing that fills those gaps. So that was kind of my take on it. But Suzanne, what have you got anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. It's COBIT revised, so we have COBIT 19, CMMI for services revised. Yeah, of course, ITIL 4 is under revision or has revised, and we're still waiting for more information around it. But that's the beautiful thing about the mesh. And you hit the nail on the head. You would have answered the same way that I would have answered. It's part of the management practices that you choose or that you ever have the capability. Looking at the various functionalities of how we've described ITIL 4, there's a few differences there that, or I should say, a few things there that I find interesting when you start talking about VeriSM and whatnot, and specifically, I'm just going to say it because I'm going to write about it, is how ITIL 4 talks about the principles driving governance, and while VeriSM looks at it's governance that drives principles. So chicken egg thing. And, you know, so everybody's going to have their own philosophy, but it, you know, how it gets explained. And I think that's been something that's been talked about quite a bit in the industry or the folks that I've been speaking with. But again, it becomes a strand in your mesh. You know, do the principles there fit the need of the organization in terms of you know, planning, improving, delivering, supporting services? If it does, use it. You have the capabilities, use it. If it doesn't, find one that does. I mean, there's a plethora out there within IT and within the business. So to me, it's a strand of the mesh. They're not competitive, they work together. So
yeah, absolutely agree. We are actually into our last couple of minutes, so I would just like to ask you all where people can learn a little bit more about you, if you've got anything newly published that you might want to mention. So Johan, I'll come to you first.
Okay, cool. Just something that I just, because you asked about DevOps, Agile and all that stuff. The way that I use VeriSM is actually using Agile and DevOps.
Yep.
So, but the nice thing that VeriSM allows me to do is it allows me to actually create cohesion between the old business and the new business, because I can have multiple meshes that I mesh together, and over time, so this bimodal two-speed IT that I'm, or business that I'm running, we can actually normalize it over time, yeah, and bring them together. So I suppose the easiest place to get me is on LinkedIn, Johan with 2 N's, H Botha, or at my company website, get-it-right.com, and look out for a new publication on Amazon called Agile Manager's Guide to Delivering Value. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And Louise, is there anywhere that you'd like people to go to read more?
One of the things is that it probably it's better. It's much like an invitation to explore in their own reality on where they are located, how they could bring what they have or utilize the mesh as an element to help them to expand what they want to incorporate, and they do not know how to do it, as I did using the Canvas and the VeriSM. They is very simple, as long as you think in terms of what elements could I bring into the blend that I have in my organization that will work for me. And as I say, I'm publishing this article, and I hope this will stimulate other people to develop for the benefit of their own organization, how they could do it with other practices that exist or with other technology. And also to build upon that same article. So I'm offering to motivate and to incentive people to grow from that point on, and taking VeriSM as a starting point for what they want to do, since it's an approach. It's not a guideline that you have to follow. It will motivate you to critical think about what would you like to do in your organizations. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And Suzanne, finally, any conferences coming up? Anything you'd like people to read?
There's a few conferences coming up. I probably should publish a schedule, as should you, because I know that you're just as busy, trying to keep up with you. I think my next one coming up is I'll be in Singapore at the end of June at the ISO Services conference, and then I'll be scattered all around in the fall. So. Moving in and out, a lot of work with standards, but then also speaking at several other places. So we'll try to put a list out, or it'll be up on the IFDC site, one of the two. So
fantastic, thank you. And I'm talking about VeriSM at the Hornbill user group in London in June. So if you're attending that, then pop along and have a chat with me about VeriSM there. Thank you so much to the panel today. Apologies for the technical difficulties. And yeah, that's been a good chat, but I feel like there's so much more to come. So I suspect we'll be reconvening to have a management mesh deep dive at some point in the very near future. So thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.